Alright, hello, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about body hatred, why it's not your fault, why we are conditioned to hate our bodies, and how coming out of hating our bodies and hating everybody else's body and judging other people by their bodies, judging ourselves by our bodies is a big thing to take on in our world, because we are very much culturally conditioned to hate our bodies and to fear our bodies, and to not only just be completely against ourselves and our emotions and our humanity and very, very many other aspects of ourselves, but that the body is encompassed in that. And as someone who puts myself out there on the internet and has been doing so since 2014, I have gotten my fair share of body hatred and being written off because of my body, and I've spoken about it many times. And again, I've just seen the kind of trauma that people carry around with their views of their own bodies and their views of other people's bodies, and how difficult it can be for us to find a level of self-love, and especially to be able to love our bodies in the current culture that we're living in. And to add to that, I want to say that, like, again, that we are then taught, right, in our culture now, especially in more awake communities or whatever you want to call it, that we're supposed to be able to love our bodies, and that it's like an expectation that we learn to love our bodies and we learn to appreciate our bodies. And there's this whole body positivity movement, and this can be a really good thing on some level, but then it can also lead to even deeper shame and guilt and feeling like we're doing something wrong when we aren't able to find self acceptance and we aren't able to love our bodies, and we still feel like we hate the way that we look. And no matter how hard we work on it, and no matter how much we try to be the kind of people who can love our bodies, we can't get there. And then it makes us feel like we're vain, or like we're just self centered, or like there's something wrong with us. That no matter how hard we try, we do all of these positive things, we try to take care of ourselves, we try the, you know, positive intention, we try all the positive thoughts, we try all the whatever, but we're on social media, we're in the media, we're in the world, and it still just feels like it's impossible to love our bodies. And so we then feel like we're not spiritual, or we're not doing it right, or we're not living how we should be living, because we aren't able to love our bodies. And then it can feel like we're being hypocritical, or like we're being just weak, or that there's something wrong with us, again, that we're focused on our bodies, and so on and so forth. So I want to talk about all of this today. The fact that you hate your body is not your fault if you have struggles with loving your body. And I hope that we can start to work together to find ways of loving our body that might feel a little bit more accessible for a lot of us, versus just like trying to love ourselves, trying to love our bodies, just trying to skip from I hate my body, everything is wrong with my body, if my body could change, everything would be different, to yeah, I love my body and this body is amazing and it doesn't ever have to change and everything's perfect about it and I can just love it and accept it for how it is. Because that's a really huge jump and that's a really huge leap. And even to exist in that place, like to get there and then to stay there, is really, really hard in our culture that is constantly telling us that there's a new way that your body is supposed to look every season, that there's a new trend, that there are new expectations and new beauty standards. And it's not even that we can like get to a place of accepting our bodies and then culture stays how it is, right? Like it all changes and everything flips and morphs and becomes different. And so again, finding a place where we can actually love and accept our bodies can be one of the most challenging things we ever do. And then add to that, right? and we're going to get into this more as we talk throughout this video. But add to that the fact that a lot of us have chronic illness or chronic pain or things that are going on with our bodies that, of course, just don't feel good. And trying to love and accept our bodies when we are in pain, when they are not working properly, when they're not doing what we think they should be doing, is really challenging. And then to add to that, the very real and the very actually happening on a day-to-day basis reality of certain bodies not being safe in our culture, on certain bodies being judged in a certain way, literally just based on the color of your skin or based on where you come from or based on how you look, your life being different than it would be if your body looked different, if you were from somewhere else. And the fact that our social structures are set up in a way where judging someone based on their body can literally have real life effects in terms of your ability to be employed, in terms of your ability to get into school, in terms of who and when and where you can interact and be safe and have opportunity and have connection. All of these things make this a very complex topic to talk about, right? Loving our bodies and accepting our bodies in a world that doesn't love and doesn't accept our bodies is really, really challenging, okay? So this is why I just wanted to say, like, right off the bat, that if you struggle to love your body, if you struggle to have peace with your body, if you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not vain. You're not broken, right? And then the whole, of course, eating disorder, judging people how they're eating and how they're moving and all of these things, and just being like, oh, you just have an eating disorder, you just have an eating disorder. How flippantly we use that as though people are just being vain, or that an eating disorder isn't a big deal and it's just silly girls or silly boys being silly, instead of understanding that it's like, no, like, we live in a world where wanting to control our bodies makes a lot of sense, and where trying to change the way that we look in order to try to feel better in our world is something we are pretty much trained to do from day one, and then we're shamed for. So it's something that is like literally an unspoken, there is an expectation that you should always be trying to make your body fit into cultural standard. That if you are not working to be healthy, if you are not working to make your body as healthy and as functional and as productive and as fitting in with culture as possible, you're failing. But at the same time, if you let anyone know that you're doing that, they're gonna judge you as having an eating disorder or being vain or being silly. And so we're living in this world where we're supposed to act like it's just natural that we're perfectly perfect, right? We're supposed to put in all this effort in order to look healthy and to fit in with culture and to fit in with all of this stuff. But we're also supposed to make it look like we don't care and we love our bodies just how they are. And if our bodies look totally different, we would be totally fine with it. And if you express any kind of level of trauma or stress, or like you can't accept your body for how it is, that you're disordered and that's your fault. There's something wrong with you. That's a weakness in you. That's a flaw in you. You see, we're living in this world where both of these things are an expectation and both of these things are a judgment. But it's like, for most of us, it's how do you win? Where is the happy medium in all of this? Because there really isn't a happy medium in all of this. It's impossible to live in that space without lying most of the time, okay? So again, we don't live in a world that supports us actually loving our bodies for how they are in any sense of the imagination. We live in a world that creates eating disorders, that creates us having conflict with our body, and then stigmatizes it and fills it full of shame and tells everyone that they're awful if they have that, but you're also awful if you're not perfectly beautiful and perfectly matching standard and completely able-bodied and fitting into culture. And we fear sickness and we fear different and we fear weakness and we judge that. So again, it's like you're literally supposed to live as though you are just perfectly healthy and it's effortless, and that you are effortlessly completely fitting in with exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and that there's no mental anguish going on any level about any of it, but you do it. And we wonder why we feel crazy. We wonder why we never feel like we can be at peace. We wonder why it's just constant judgment and constant fear and constant flinging of insults at each other. And there's no compassion and there's no understanding and there's no validation for how impossible it is to live in our cultural beauty standards. Yeah? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And again, just putting it out there, I have a mystery school. If you want to go deeper with me on my work, you can find my school in all of my links. You can find it in my bio, in my link tree, wherever you, my website. It's in all my YouTube video descriptions. Because this work of learning to love and accept yourself and learning to have compassion for yourself and learning to be kind to yourself is not easy. It is really challenging in our world. And so, of course, I wanted to create a course. I wanted to create many courses to help support you on your journey of this. And that is what the Mystery School is. It's there to be a support for you as you learn how to love yourself, because it is just not as simple as deciding you're going to be nice to yourself. Our shame, blame, guilt complex that tells us that the only way to get out of pain is to hate ourselves and to shame ourselves and to try to fix ourselves are very deep. And then culture is completely set up in order to sustain that, to sustain those ideas, and to tell us that that is the solution, that trying to fix ourselves and trying to change ourselves and weaving shame into literally everything that we could ever discover about ourselves, instead of helping us understand that everything that we are and everything that we're doing has a positive intention. It's all innocent. It's all coming from childhood. It's all coming from us doing the best we can to try to navigate a world that is not set up for us to be safe and healthy and loved and validated and secure. And so that is what the school is all about. You can check out one-on-one coaching with me. There's lots and lots and lots of free resources on, like I say, my blog and my YouTube and my Instagram and my TikTok and all of these things. So hopefully there's something for you somewhere that fits your capacity, that fits what you're interested in, that fits your budget, all of these things. So just putting that out there, that's that. Okay. So now let's talk about this, right? So again, as I was saying in the intro, our culture is set up in a way where we are expected to pretend that we are flawlessly fitting into beauty standards without having to put in any effort. That we fully love ourselves, that we have no food fear, that we'll eat whatever we want, we work out whenever we want, everything's intuitive. We're just listening to our bodies and everything's great and everything's lovely and we have no hang-ups about anything and we never have a bad body day and we just love everything about ourselves, and that's what's happening. But at the same time that we are presenting perfectly. We have the perfect skin, we have the perfect hair, we have the perfect nails, we have the body that's, in vogue right now. So right now you have like a big booty and a tiny waist, and you're working out and you have muscle, but you're not too thin, but you're not too big. And again, we're supposed to be presenting this image that we just have that, and that we have it with no effort and no mental turmoil. And also, like I say, we can participate in the drinking and the eating and the doing everything that anyone else would do. There's no hang-ups, there's no drama. That's pretty much the expectation of our culture. You look perfect. You look exactly how you're supposed to look. You're able-bodied and you're beautiful. Yes? So that's what it was for women, and for men, same thing. You have no body hang-ups, you go to the gym, you lift your weights, you're ripped, you're low body fat, but at the same time, you'll go drinking with your bros and you'll eat the pizza and you have no hang-ups about it and you just feel secure all the time. That's the expectation. So if anyone shows any sign that they're putting in effort to make their body look a certain way, I guarantee you, someone is going to be like, you have an eating disorder. There's something wrong with you. You're mentally unstable. It's not okay that you're putting in effort. Like at this point, even in the kind of body positivity movement, there's a lot of shame and rejection around people who are doing things like intentional weight loss. And even though we know categorically, like we know 100% that it is easier to live in our world when you are a straight-sized human being. We know that you are judged less. We know that then you can go into a store and just buy normal clothes for a normal price. We know that you can then sit in a bus seat or you can sit on a plane and not be in a situation where maybe you don't fit, or maybe the world is not set up for you and people are going to be upset with you and people are going to judge you and people are going to criticize you. We know we live in a world where it's still socially acceptable to tell somebody, you're going to die of a heart attack if you don't lose weight. You look unhealthy. I'm just concerned for you. You shouldn't be eating that. You shouldn't be doing that. And it's like socially acceptable for people to diagnose people, for people to assume that people are eating a certain way they shouldn't be eating, for those judgments to exist. And again, we know for a fact, we know statistically, that people who occupy certain bodies are less likely to be hired, are less likely to be respected, are less likely to be seen as intelligent or capable based on their body size. So that exists. We know that that is true, that it is harder to live in this world if you occupy a body that's on either side of the normal spectrum, right? So if you're bigger than normal, and it's the same thing, it's very similar if you're smaller than normal. If you don't fit into the straight size expectation of thin and you're too thin, you're less than what you should be, it's very similar. Automatically, people are going to feel like it is okay to assume that you just have an eating disorder, that the only reason that you might be thin is because you are doing something to yourself, because you are a silly human, right? So, and again, there's no even compassion for why someone, even if they do have an eating disorder and that is why they are thin, there's no compassion for it. There isn't understanding. There isn't like, yeah, we live in a really shitty culture that basically tells you that your worth and your value, especially for femme people, completely revolves around your body size and your capacity to find a partner, your capacity to whatever, be respected, be loved, be seen as intelligent, be seen as capable, comes from how your body looks. That we live in a world where it's completely reasonable and acceptable to be starving yourself and to be working out like crazy and to be doing these things, so long as it doesn't make you too skinny, so long as you still look normal, right? But if you look thinner than you should, automatically we're allowed to say there's something wrong with you, there's no compassion for it, you're bad, you're wrong, you don't love yourself, you're breaking the code of the consensus that we're all supposed to be able to just have these perfectly flawless bodies with no effort. And we're all supposed to be able to have these perfectly flawless bodies while eating whatever we want and working out intuitively and just feeling however we want to feel and then just looking perfect. So if you have an eating disorder, Or if you are thinner than you should be, it's like, oh, what are you doing? You're breaking the code. You're making it obvious that to be in that body isn't just eat whatever you want and work out whenever you want and just have this intuitive lovely relationship with your body and it's just easy and we can all have it, right? We fear that. And then of course I think there's levels of fear that come from, it reminds us of illness and it reminds us of poverty and it reminds us of not having enough and it reminds us of all of these things that we're afraid of. So again, it's like completely culturally acceptable to just hate these people and to hate on them and to assume again that they're unintelligent or that they're just confused about nutrition or that it's appropriate for us to just offer advice and offer counseling and offer words because we really know what's going on, and to say it again as though it's just concern but you don't look well. And again, it's like we, on both sides of the spectrum, when we are judging people based on their bodies, the real reality is we generally know little to nothing about them. We generally know little to nothing about how they're eating or their health status or why they might actually be looking that way. But we are in a position where it's just so normal to assume that you're just doing it to yourself. Because again, culture has taught us that obtaining these perfect, beautiful, able-bodied bodies is our responsibility, that it's available to everybody, and if you don't have that, it's just because you're making the wrong choices. There's something wrong with you. You see? This is the fundamental flaw in the thinking that leads to all of these offshoot problems that so many of us have in the conversation of learning to love and accept our bodies. Is that there's that foundational, fundamental thing we've all been trained to accept, which is cultural beauty standards are the baseline standard. That is how we all should look. That is what everyone should be striving for. And if you are not striving for that, and if you are not achieving that, that we as a culture have agreed, we are allowed to judge you. We are allowed to make life less safe for you. We are allowed to give you less opportunity, less space to exist, less safety, less provision. We are allowed to do that because the underlying fundamental assumption is everyone is responsible for their body and everyone is supposed to be perfectly healthy, perfectly able-bodied, and we are trained to believe that cultural beauty standards are akin to someone being healthy, and therefore someone being responsible, someone being trustworthy, someone being good. All of these things are tied in together. So if you don't have an able body, or if you don't look how you're supposed to look, all of this other baggage comes with it. The baggage that says you are not good enough, you are not taking responsibility for yourself, you are not as trustworthy or as good or as pure as everybody else who does have those things. And therefore, society is allowed to make life harder for you. That is the world we actually exist in. But again, make sure that you make it look completely effortless to achieve all of this. Okay, so true. Especially with social media now, it is so easy for people to just sit behind the screen and type messages because they know they don't have to face consequences as much. Sad. Yes, right? And again, I will just speak from personal experience, right? I have lived in a chronically ill body that literally had a birth defect from the moment I was born that totally fucked up my entire digestive system and made eating a painful experience for me for my entire life. And then instead of being helped and instead of being supported in that, I was gaslit. Medically, I was told I just had an eating disorder. I was told I'm just afraid of food. I was told that I was doing it to myself, that it was my fault. And then on top of that, right, I was mentally and emotionally abused by my caregivers. I was spiritually abused by my church. I have autism and nobody knew that. And, right, I was completely traumatized for my entire upbringing and got into my adulthood with all of this stuff of just physical pain, chronic illness that I had to figure out and manage all on my own. I never got to go to school. I wasn't supported in that way. There wasn't money. I had to be out on my own very, very early on. I had to figure out how to solve all of my own trauma and get over all that stuff because I couldn't afford therapy or therapy was shitty and all of these things. And then I come on the internet being like, okay, if I can do it and if I can figure out these tools, I would really like to give what I have learned to other people. I want to be a support so that no one has to be as alone as I have ever been. And oftentimes a whole bunch of what I get is just, you're ugly and you must have an eating disorder and we don't like how you look, and there's all this judgment when it's like, holy smokes, right? Like, I am just someone who is trying so hard to give what I was not given and to try to offer what I wish someone had given me through all of those years of just being completely alone and in pain and struggling and all of this stuff, the validation and the love and the support that I never got. And then, like, right, figuring out this self-love path and figuring out these shame and blame and guilt stories and figuring out tools that really do work to heal the nervous system and to move things forward and wanting to give that out. And then knowing that every single time I put out a video and every single time I say anything where you can see my body, people are just going to assume bad things about me and then they're going to say them to me, right? Like that is going to be something that I deal with for as long as I'm on here. And just realizing how toxic our culture is with that, right? Like, I have thin hair and it's probably because I've been completely stressed and probably malnourished for most of my life. And instead of there being any remote level of compassion, it's like, you must just be starving yourself. I am underweight and it has been a struggle for many years. And instead of people being able to be like, wow, maybe she's sick, maybe she has things going on that I don't know anything about, maybe it's all very complicated and all of this, it's like, well, she must just be lying. She must not love herself. This must all be a sham. This must all be false. And I get why people do that. I get it. And I've been given so much unsolicited advice over the years of people who literally think they're offering compassion or that they're offering me something that I just didn't think of, right? Like that I must, as someone who occupies my own body, as someone who knows my own history, as someone who is like more intimately connected with myself than anyone ever is going to be, some random person on the internet who just comes across my videos like, I know more than you immediately because you look dumb, because you don't fit into cultural standard. Like, there's literally I can just assume all of these things about you and give you this advice when I know nothing about you, because it makes sense for me to just assume that you're dumber than me, right? Like this, because that's how our culture is set up. So then we wonder why we have so much trouble loving our bodies. Yeah, so the blaming and gaslighting is real. This shit makes me so angry. Absolutely, right? And it's normalized. It's systemic. It's institutionalized. It's not just people on the internet, because that is bad enough, right? That is hurtful and that is shitty. But again, at the same time, I lived for 35 years with a literal birth defect, right? My intestine was squished between two arteries, so my stomach couldn't empty, and the rest of my intestine was cut off from peristalsis, which led to systemic chronic infection, which I am so lucky that my colon didn't go necrotic, like literally lose function. I am in pain every single day, and I will probably be in pain every single day for the rest of my life. It completely inhibits my capacity to live a normal life. I cannot sit down at the table and eat a meal with my family. I will never be able to do that again. I will never be able to go out late at night. Because the second I start eating, I'm either going to be in pain or I need to be near a bathroom. That is my life. And that has been my life for my whole life. And rather than being helped and supported by medical professionals, I was told it was my fault. Because if you don't look in the normal range of weight, it's institutionally okay for people to just assume it's a mental disorder. And then again, like I said, for that to even be treated the way that it's treated, where you're just stupid and you don't deserve care, and anything that you might be feeling inside of your body is irrelevant. There's no way that you could have anything wrong with you. There's no way that there could be a reason why you don't want to eat, or a reason why you have food fear, or a reason beyond you just want to be skinny because you're vain, because you're selfish, because you're a silly girl who just needs to learn to stop being so obsessed with it. In a world that says you are going to be less safe, you are going to be less provided for, you are going to be less respected if you don't fit into these standards. It's horrifying. It's literally impossible. So lack of emotional intelligence, bitterness at times in their own life. I have never ever seen a genuinely happy person say anything to anyone. And that is absolutely true. And so again, right, that the cultural expectation that we have on ourselves, so that hate that we have towards our own bodies, that fear that we have towards our own bodies, oftentimes we then turn around and we project that on everyone around us, right? So this is why, again, a lot of the time when people say things like this to me, I have compassion for them and I have understanding, because it's like, okay, but I know that you're saying these things and you're saying them to yourself. I know that this is how you think about yourself. I know that these are the fears that you go to bed with at night for yourself. Because again, we live in a world where you are not safe, where you don't feel okay, where you don't feel secure, because you are living under the same rules as everybody else. And so there's a part of us that feels like as we project it onto other people, we're protecting ourselves. As we reject other people, and as we say, right, your body is gross and your body is bad, and at least I'm not like you, we're creating that separation because we fear being like that. We want to separate ourselves from the people who are overweight. We want to separate ourselves from the people who are not able-bodied. We want to separate ourselves from the people who have a skin color or who look in a certain way where the culture we're in makes it okay for them to be treated as less than human. We want to separate ourselves from that because we don't want to experience the pain that they're experiencing. There's so much existential dread involved. There's so much existential fear that the judgment and the projection and all of those things that we do is literally a self-protective mechanism. I'm proclaiming these things as a way of separating myself from you. Okay? And then we get into the wellness world and the health world and the spirituality world, which tries to promote itself as being the antidote to this, as being different than this. And what is that filled with? Products that we can buy, things we can consume, and rules for how we are supposed to operate. Right? The health, the wellness, and the spirituality world is culture. It is the same message over and over and over again, that you can be in complete control of how your body looks, of how your body functions, of how you can be productive and consumptive in our culture. And if there's any flaw, if there's anything going wrong, don't worry. We can sell you the solution. We can sell you the problem. And this is what is so toxic, in my opinion, about the health, wellness, and spirituality world, is that there's so much fear mongering that goes on in these places. There's so much. It's the water. It's the toxins in the food. It's because you're not a carnivore. It's because you're not vegan. It's because you're not this, you're not that. The government is after you. Big pharma is after you. Supplement companies are lying to you, but they are the solution. And there's so much lack of evidence. There's so much just, this is like a whole other subject that we could get into one day, but just to kind of give you a broad overview, right? When we are existing in these bodies that don't feel good, when we are existing in these bodies where we can't just eat whatever we want and move intuitively and look perfect all at the same time with no effort and have no mental hangups about it, which is literally nobody. Like, nobody is having that experience. I don't know anybody who's actually having that experience, even though a lot of social media people present themselves to be having that experience. I don't think that that's actually real, right? So most of us are walking around with either real, true illness, things going wrong, pain that's actually happening, or our bodies just don't look how they're supposed to look. They're just not naturally perfect and flawless and a model body, and then you can eat a hamburger every day and drink with your friends and work out intuitively and look perfect. Like, people are struggling. Pretty much everyone doesn't feel good. Nobody feels safe. And then again, on top of that, the existential realities of being in a body, right? Knowing we can get sick, knowing we can die, watching other people that we love around us get sick and die, and all of the fear that comes with that, and the fear of aging. That's something we haven't even talked about yet, right? This fear that we're going to get old and we're going to be useless to the system, right? All of these values coming down to how productive and how consumptive can you be? How much can you fit in with culture, which is a culture of constant consumption and constant production? Because remember, beauty standards and being hyper productive and hyper consumptive are one and the same thing. It's all the same indoctrination. That beauty culture requires constant consumption. The beauty culture we have right now, and the beauty culture we have had for a very long time, has always been for the wealthy. And this is something we really have to look at. The beauty standards come from the complex of, this is what it looks like to be rich. Because being rich in our culture is akin to having power, safety, and security. And then our culture has made that the people who have the most wealth, we have been indoctrinated to believe that they are the best people, that they are the good people, they are the people who are responsible, they are the people who are doing what they should be doing. And if you are not wealthy, and if you can't make yourself look wealthy by making yourself look healthy, which is to fit into body and beauty standards, you are then therefore less deserving of rights, freedoms, privileges, and provision. So we can squander you to menial labor and low skill jobs and we can have you work a full day's work and not pay you and not give you health insurance and not give you all of these things because it's culturally accepted that those at the top of the system are the good people who should be accumulating more and more and more and more and more for themselves at the expense of everyone else because they are more worthy and valuable. That is the reality. If we are just going to call it for how it is, beauty standards have nothing to do with health, have nothing to do with intelligence, have nothing to do with value. It has everything to do with you being in a constant state of consumption and in a constant state of production, right? If you're not healthy, if you're not beautiful, if you're not flawlessly doing all of these things, it represents that you're not taking responsibility for yourself to make sure you're as healthy as possible so you can be as consumptive and productive as possible. That's what this all boils down to. Okay? That is what this boils down to. So especially to women, we get constantly beaten down by beauty standards and what we must fit into in order to be worthy enough for marriage, reproduction, and provision. It really sucks. We can't escape it no matter how much we know the truth that it isn't what makes us valuable. Exactly. Because that is not what culture values. Culture doesn't value humanity. Culture does not value what has value. Culture values production and consumption at all costs. It values human beings who are willing to sacrifice themselves as much as possible to the system of hyperproduction and hyperconsumption. That's what this all boils down to. And then we are all culturally indoctrinated to be gatekeepers for each other. We are all culturally indoctrinated to fear and hate our own bodies and to fear and hate everyone else's body, to judge, to make it unsafe, to validate that, yeah, if you don't fit in, it should be okay that we judge you. It should be okay that we assume that you're just not taking responsibility for yourself. And then again, the wellness, self-help, spirituality world come in, and all they do is say, yeah, if you take enough responsibility for yourself, if you do all the right things, you can heal anything, you can know the secret truth, you can find your community of all the woke people who really understand what's going on, and then you can eat all organic food and have all of your organic skincare and make sure that you wear only natural fabrics and da-da-da-da-da, as though this is what taking responsibility for yourself is. When in real reality, again, it's just more consumption. It's just consuming different things, right? The asleep people who are going with culture are constantly consuming makeup and hair extensions and nails and food, like in order to build their bodies and have the protein powder and have the supplements and the gym membership or whatever. But then at the same time, you have to be able to go out to a restaurant and eat with your friends and have the new fashion and have the new workout program all going at the same time, which is incredibly expensive. Think about how much money people spend on making themselves look flawlessly and effortlessly perfect. In order to fit in with cultural beauty standards, you have to be spending so much money. And then in order to be woke and well and in the spirituality world, it's the same. You're just consuming different stuff, right? You're consuming shit tons of supplements. You're consuming natural fabrics. You're consuming the next ayahuasca retreat and the next book and the next program and the next level of detox and the detox program for levels 1, 2, and 3 and da-da-da-da-da. You're still constantly in a state of consumption, spending money to make yourself look or to make yourself heal or to make yourself whatever. And we're always afraid of the boogeyman, whatever it is in whatever chosen wellness circle that you've had, toxins or government or pharma or whatever. Do you see? It's all the same stuff. It's all the same message. If you buy the right things and you produce the right things, you will be honored and respected because you'll have the perfect body. And if you don't have the perfect body, everyone is allowed to judge you. Everyone is allowed to assume that you're just not taking responsibility for yourself, that you're not doing what you should be doing, and it is okay for us to treat you as less than human. And then we wonder why we hate our bodies. We wonder why we can't have this effortless, flawless, lovely relationship with these bodies that we live in. Because it's impossible. It's so deeply challenging in our world that values consumption and production over humanity. Because in order for our systems to continue to exist, where those who are at the top continue to hoard more and more and more for themselves, the population has to be convinced that that is okay. The population has to be convinced that that's how it should be. The population has to be convinced that the only way to better their own life is to become like the people at the top, not to demand change. So things like racism and things like prejudice against people's bodies that lead to systemic lack of opportunity. Like, you are literally less likely to be chosen to be able to rent somewhere based on where you come from. It is still culturally appropriate to not hire someone based on their race, based on where they come from. It is still culturally appropriate that we have companies where the CEOs and the people at the top are billionaires, while their workers who actually do the work a full day and don't make ends meet. The fact that we live in a world where that is something that we accept as a culture, and then again are trained to hate and blame and shame ourselves when we are in that state. We are trained to accept that this prejudice that leads to literal systemic unfairness is okay, is how it should be, because those people are bad. Those people are lazy. Those people are doing it to themselves. And we can tell by looking at them. That's the culture we live in. We are so deeply indoctrinated that this is how it should be, that this is how it is, that we're not taking the time to step back and be like, hey, wait, what? What's going on? And why? Why are the people who are at the top at the top? Do they actually deserve to be there? Are they actually better? Or are they just really good at exploiting and taking advantage? And why do we hold the values that we hold? Why do we value consumption and production over human life? Why do we still assume that your purpose has to fit into the economy? Why are we still living with this mindset that it is okay to prejudice certain people based on their capacity for their body to do stuff? Where are these values coming from? And who is benefiting from that? Who is benefiting from every time someone comes on the internet and says something mean about somebody's body? Because the person you're saying it to isn't not benefiting. I can guarantee you that. 0 times has anyone ever been helped by a concern troll. And I know people don't like that. Because I know there are people out there who are genuinely thinking, I'm saying something from a place of love. I'm going to be the person that wakes this person up to the idea that they have an eating disorder and they just didn't realize it. And I asked and now they know, and it changed their whole life. Like, we all think we're going to be that person. But I can guarantee you, you are not. It doesn't matter. You are not helping. It's not helping you, the person saying it, because all it's doing is separating you from your humanity. So who's benefiting from that? So some have labeled this workism, the spiritualization of work to the point that work becomes a marker of virtue and goodness. Okay, and this is the other thing, right? Like, the fact that productivity has become a virtue in our culture is, again, part of this whole indoctrination. Productivity is not a virtue. In real reality, productivity has one purpose: to support life. The only reason we should be producing is to produce what is required so that people can live happy, healthy lives. Right? This isn't about becoming unproductive. This is about putting productivity where it belongs, as a means to an end, not an end of itself. In real reality, in healthy cultures, they produce enough to create safety for the community. And then everyone stops producing at that point and enjoys their life. If we look at the blue zones, the places where the people live the longest, one of the main things they have in common is they work to live. They don't live to work. Because they understand. We produce enough food so that everyone can eat, and then we stop. We produce enough stuff so that everyone can have a reasonable, comfortable life, and then we stop. Because going beyond that harms us, harms the planet. It's out of control. It's literal cancer. It's actual cancer. That is what cancer does. It continues to produce to the point where it destroys its host. This is what we are doing to ourselves with our hyperproduction and hyperconsumption. We are a cancer unto ourselves. And again, it's all couched in beauty culture. To be as consumptive and productive as you need to be to fit into beauty culture requires that you are over-consuming and overproducing. I guarantee you. You cannot have the perfect glazed skin and the perfect hair and the perfect body and eat all the food and do all the exercise you're supposed to do and have the clothes and be a part of the ever-changing everything without being very wealthy, spending so much of your time and your money on it, and overdoing it. Period, end of story, full stop. Beauty culture has always been about looking wealthy. Nothing more. It's not about health. It's about wealth. And it's about wealth because, again, we are constantly being stigmatized that those who are wealthy are the most deserving. They are the most intelligent. They are the most worthy. Which is not true in our culture at all. If we look at the wealthiest people, they are not the most productive. They are not the most, they are not offering what is the most beneficial to society. They are not the most important people by any stretch of the imagination. If all the entertainers and all the CEOs and all the billionaires just disappeared today, we'd be better off. Not that those people, those human beings are not worthy human beings, but the role they play in the culture, we would be fine. If all the grocery store clerks and the nurses and the janitors and the low skill people disappeared, we'd be fucked. And yet we don't value them. And we don't value how they look, and we don't value what they can afford. And we assume they're unhealthy, and we assume they're lazy, and we assume that they're all of these things because they can't afford to look how you're supposed to look. And that's okay, because that's what culture is. So I really want you to look at this today. I really want you to start to question and deconstruct where beauty culture is coming from, where these messages are actually coming from, what it actually means to fit in or not fit in. Why is it okay to hold these values? Why is it okay to say these things to each other? Why is it that when you exist in the margins, is it okay for us to assume shitty things about you? Why do we have such a desire to gatekeep ourselves and one another? Who is benefiting from all of this? You don't hate your body because you're vain. You don't hate your body because you're weak. You hate your body because our culture depends on you hating your body. If you were to decide today, I love my body for exactly how it is, I'm not going to participate in this anymore, you stop hyper consuming and hyper producing. It would change so much of the way that you live. And you would be then part of the disempowerment of the system. And people don't like that. The system doesn't want that. Okay, some people bully in the name of being honest, like, but he is like that, and can't you see? I'm just honest, so toxic. And honestly, honesty is a positive thing. Don't use it for bullying. But again, right, you're not being honest. When you do that to somebody, you don't know them. That's not honesty. That's projection and assumption. Are you asking questions? Are you getting to know the person? Are you working from a place of consent? Did that person even ask you for your opinion or for your help? And if they did, are you taking the time to get to know where they actually are before you offer advice? Because to just come up to someone and say, hey, I can just tell by looking at you, you're not healthy and here's what you need. That's not honesty. That's projection. You have no idea. And again, right, that's our culture that says, well, I look better than you, so therefore I must be more intelligent. Therefore my opinion is more worthy and more valuable than yours. You must just be doing something stupid. That's the only reason you could look like that. That's culture. That's indoctrination. That's not honesty. We're kidding ourselves if we think that's honesty. And again, I think a lot of well-meaning people really believe they are doing something good when they do that, because they don't realize how indoctrinated they are. But it's not honesty. It's projection, and it's bullying, like you say. It's gatekeeping the shitty culture. So hopefully this gave you some things to think about. things to consider. Do you want to participate in this? Or do you want to start to deconstruct this? And compassion and curiosity for yourself are always the first steps of how we start to deconstruct this. What if there isn't anything wrong with you? And what if looking wealthy isn't the thing that makes you valuable? Okay? So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in whatever comment section you want to leave them in. I love having conversations with you. I love your thoughts. I love your additions. I love your questions. Let's keep talking about this and talking about it for what it really is, right? It's not so simple to just look in the mirror and say a positive affirmation or two. That's not what this is. We have to deconstruct where this is coming from. Because putting a whole bunch of just platitudes on top of this mountain of garbage isn't going to change anything. We have to look at the mountain of garbage. Okay? Okay. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was illuminating on some level. Let me know what you think. And I'll see you next week. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for being here. You are worthy of love no matter how you look, no matter your level of consumption, and no matter your level of production. I'm so happy you were here too. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your thoughts. I really enjoy everyone being here. Thank you. Thank you for being part of this community. We're going to do this together. Okay. Thank you. Goodbye.